Good afternoon. Thanks so much. Let's start by talking about extinctions. Most of us might think of extinction as something far away, something occurring in remote rainforests or islands, as with the iconic dodo. But let's test that assumption. Let's ask how many global species extinctions have occurred here in Switzerland over the last 100 years. Hands up, who thinks no extinctions in Switzerland in the last century? Hands up. 1 or 2 extinctions? Anybody? 3 or 4? 5 global extinctions in Switzerland over the last 100 years? So those of you with your hands up are correct. There have been 5 global extinctions, species losses from the planet for which Switzerland has the responsibility over the last century. Moreover, more broadly, there are 317 species, Swiss species, which face a high risk of extinction in the medium term, like this fish, Zingelasper, from the Doubs drainage, the Rhone drainage. How do we know? How do we know all of this? For more than 50 years, IUCN and its partners have been generating the Red List of threatened species as a measure of risk of species extinction. The Red List now assesses the extinction risk for more than 150,000 species around the world and finds that about a quarter of those, about 25% of species worldwide, face a high risk of extinction. The Red List is based on a set of structured categories and criteria, rules that ensure that assessments are transparent and repeatable. This is the heart of the biodiversity crisis, the 6th extinction. The Red List informs much of what we know about the biodiversity crisis today. So, for example, in the IPBES 2019 global assessment, a synthesis was carried out across the Red List to look at the variation in extinction risk between different groups of species and shows that some species groups are very much more threatened with extinction than others. It was also this IPBES assessment which extrapolated from the Red List to predict that about 1 million species face a high risk of extinction worldwide. In a similar vein, the Red List can be used to derive Red List indices, indicators of how fast species are sliding towards extinction. The Red List Index has been adopted by the UN as an official indicator for progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. Here from the SDG report last year, we can see that over the last 2 decades, the global Red List Index has deteriorated by about 10% worldwide. So, having started by thoroughly depressing you, let me now attempt to cheer you up by highlighting some key actions which different sectors have the opportunity now to undertake to halt and to reverse the loss of biodiversity. This is in the context of global goals for nature, as with the Kunming to Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework agreed last year, and adding specificity to the commitments to nature already established in the 2015 Sustainable Development Goals. First, let's think about governments. And for governments, national and local governments, I can't emphasize enough the importance of safeguarding, of protecting important places for biodiversity, or key biodiversity areas, KBAs. Fortunately, we have a very good understanding of where important places are for biodiversity around the world. More than 16,000 KBAs documented worldwide, including 31 here in Switzerland. We also have an excellent understanding of protected areas, areas of land and water dedicated to nature protection around the world. More than 10,000 protected areas established here in Switzerland. Unfortunately, the relationship between these two is not a very good one. Another one of the official Sustainable Development Goal indicators is progress in protection, in safeguard of KBAs. And you can see here that the Swiss performance against this indicator is rather poor, with only about 40% of KBAs safeguarded on average across Switzerland. There's therefore a really important opportunity, a really important set of actions for governments around the world in delivering the effective safeguard of important sites. Let's move on to think about business and finance, to think about the private sector. And here I want to really emphasize the importance of disclosing risks and opportunities for biodiversity, and of establishing and implementing science-based targets to avert the risks and to maximize the opportunities. This establishment of targets and disclosure of risks and opportunities requires relevant, intuitive, and scalable metrics of biodiversity that are responsive to the economic drivers of biodiversity gain or biodiversity loss. And to this end, IUCN and about 50 other institutions have developed the Species Threat Abatement and Restoration metric, which allows any given actor, a company, a bank, to measure the potential contributions of particular actions in particular places towards the global biodiversity framework goal of reducing extinction risk. This Species Threat Abatement and Restoration metric is based on the IUCN Red List. It's available through the Integrated Biodiversity Assessment tool, and its use is essential in ensuring the biodiversity components of nature-positive frameworks, such as that emerging at the moment through the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosure. Finally, let's have a think about individuals. And here I want to really underscore the importance of consumer preference. We now know that about a third of global extinction risk is embodied in international trade. This map is derived by combining the Species Threat Abatement and Restoration metric with global trade data, and shows those countries in orange, including Switzerland, which are net importers of species extinction. Thus, for example, the chocolate which you had for lunch, which our moderator was handing out in the break, may embody species extinction risk from, for example, unsustainable production of cacao in Africa, or vegetable oils in Asia, or of milk here in Switzerland. Or conversely, it might provide the opportunity to mitigate biodiversity loss through sustainable production of those products. Given that, that means that yourselves, individuals, families, have the opportunity, through preferring brands with transparent and sufficient biodiversity commitments, you have the opportunity to contribute substantively and measurably towards bending the curve on global biodiversity loss. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Thomas. Appreciate it. Thank you. I'll take that.